Fantastic. So just to give you a little introduction, my name is Matt Melamed, a part of the Wellness Think Tank, a part of the Academic Life and Emergency Medicine. Today we're here with Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. He's a former Army Ranger, professor of psychology, and he's written 2 books as far as I know. I think, are you writing any more?
Don't get started. There's quite a bit there. We got, those are the 2 key ones, On Combat, On Killing. My latest one is Assassination Generation. And we just put out a book released from Amazon.com this month on Bulletproof Marriage. It's a 90-day devotional for first responders, all first responders, for spouses to work together, and from a spiritual standpoint. I've got 2 kids' books. I've got a couple of novels, and I got a couple others in there that we've had some impact. But we'll stay focused today. The key book today is really my book On Combat.
Correct.
Psychology and physiology of human conflict, and that's where we'll be working on it today. That's a book I commend your attention. It's Marine Corps Commandant's required reading, Army and Air Force recommended reading, issued in the DA Academy, issued to the Marshals Academy, translated into 5 languages, and that's primarily what we're working on today is on combat.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And I wanted to speak to you today to try and take some of these theories and experiences and knowledge that have been applied in the military and law enforcement and for fire and police, and try and take them and apply them to especially emergency medicine doctors. I mean, it can be almost any physician out there, but I think in terms of emergency medicine physicians, we tend to be in a high stress, high volume environment where we're faced with some sort of critical thinking, critical reasoning, or critical stress scenario. So somebody who's in cardiac arrest, or somebody who's been shot or stabbed, or somebody who can't breathe well. And we have to deal with that at a moment's notice. And then from there, go back to our daily task of taking care of the people who've come in with chest pains and belly pains and headaches and dizziness. And so I think reading through your book, and having sat through one of your lectures before, I thought your topics and your ideas would be great to kind of discuss that with other emergency physicians who would listen to this and who would glean some information from there, and we go from there. So for example, one of the questions that I had for you was, how would, if we're faced with this stressful scenario. So for example, somebody comes in cardiac arrest, they have no heartbeat. And we have to go from our normal daily tasks of talking to the people who have abdominal pains and chest pains, who are our bread and butter in terms of patients. And then we go into this high stress scenario. How would you have somebody prepare for something like that? And how would you have them deal with it?
All right. Well, let me start at the beginning, Matt.
Sure.
And the first step in resiliency. Now, I taught Department of Defense-wide psychiatric grand rounds. It was videotaped and transmitted out over 100 locations, Department of Defense-wide, worldwide. I've taught psychiatric grand rounds at many hospitals across the years. I've had the honor to teach emergency room grand rounds, and I teach first responders. I teach cops in all 50 states. I retired from the Army 21 years ago. Been on the road 200-300 days a year for 21 years. I'm certified to teach police in all 50 states. I train every federal agency, all of our Tier 1 Spec Ops. I also had the honor to do a lot of first responders. FDNY brings me out there for their leadership conference on a pretty steady basis out of the Palisades. Had the honor of training 300 EMS in Maine just a little bit ago. I've always got EMS and fire translating through what I do, and I teach resiliency. The idea of individuals who can encounter these stressful events and not be troubled by them, and that really is the majority. We'll talk about that. But the first step in resiliency is motivation, to understand how badly the world needs what you have to give, and part of that is understand how bad the situation is. Now, I'm the guest professor. I presented at over 200 universities and colleges worldwide, and I'm the guest criminal justice professor. And the whole profession of criminal justice is fundamentally flawed right up front, and I kind of blow them right out of the water up front, because how do we measure crime and justice? Oh, the murder rate. The murder rate's the gold standard. No, the murder rate is being held down by medical technology. It's this fundamental dynamic that underlies violence across our world. We try to measure it by the number of dead people, and the leaps and bounds of medical technology is holding down the murder rate. If we had World War II level medical technology in Afghanistan, we'd probably have 10 times the dead American troops. If we had Vietnam level medical technology in Iraq, we'd probably have 4 times as many dead American troops. And the same thing is true in our streets. A major UMass Harvard study told us if we had 1970s level medical technology, the murder rate would be 4 times what it is in America. And that data is over 20 years old. The leaps and bounds of life-saving technology in the last 20 years is astounding. So we got to begin with a fundamental reworking of our view of the world. And we take the number of dead people and we measure that as, the murder rate completely underrepresents the situation. So when I present, I use a document camera and I use my easels, and I want to try to put some of that out for your audience here today. But this is the number of people murdered in America. Mm-hmm. Now, and we go back to 2006, and we had 17,000 Americans murdered. By 2008, we're down to 16,000. By 2009, 15,000. 2010, 14,000. This is medical technology doing its job. And then it levels out. Now, if we go back across years, it's been up and down, but it leveled out. And then in the last 2 years, it has exploded like nothing we have ever seen in the history of our nation. Now, I asked my audiences, how many of y'all saw this in the news? How many of y'all saw this in the newspaper? If this is the stock market, we hear about it every week. Here's this fundamental dynamic of what's happening within America. In 2015, there was 1,700 more Americans murdered the year before. The number should be coming down. In 2015, we had 2016, we had 1,300 more Americans murdered the year before. Now, the last we have data for, and it actually just came out last month, the 2017 data came out, and we went down about 120. And it should be down here.
Yeah.
What I want you to understand is we're living in stunningly, profoundly violent times. And our enemy is denial. We've got to defend ourselves, defend our places of work. We've got this mindset that if we don't have somebody there that can shoot back, then bad things won't happen. And it's just the opposite. But we begin with, and New York City's doing a great job. We're having armed cops in our hospitals. I trained the National Hospital Administrators Conference. I was their national speaker a couple of years back, and half of all hospitals have armed security, and the other half know they're negligent. And so this failure to prepare for these violent times, this thought that the bad men won't go away if we do nothing, and that everything's all peachy keen. We got to understand how bad it is, but also understand how desperately the world needs what you have to give. Mm-hmm. The life-saving skills, these murders that are prevented, these lives that are saved, is one of the most fundamental and powerful contributions any human being can ever make. And the value of what you bring to our civilization, is there any greater value than saving a human life, than preventing a murder through medical technology that saves this life? And so the first step is understand the magnitude of the threat and how desperately the world needs what you have to give. Your sacrifice is for a noble and worthy purpose. And your courage, your compassion, your confidence shines bright for the darkness of the age. Now, with all that said, let's kind of reset our whole view on the mental health dynamics. And when we talk about this whole image of post-traumatic stress disorder and psychiatric disorders, Hollywood gives us 2 goofy myths. And the first goofy Hollywood myth is what I call the pity party. Hollywood loves the pity party. The tormented, haunted veteran comes home from the war scarred for life. There are people like that, but they're rare. You must believe the vast majority of people are made stronger by the bad things in life. Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill us only makes us stronger. And we've all seen Saving Private Ryan. We saw what the World War II veterans live with. Not for a one-year rotation. Year after year, without end in sight, our World War II veterans face things we can't imagine. And we had over 100,000 psychiatric casualties in World War II, enough to man 10 divisions. But we had over 10 million Americans in the fight. 100,000 is 1% of 10 million. Do you understand? Yep. The vast majority came home from World War II stronger. Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. He stole that from the Bible. Romans chapter 5, we glory in tribulation. For tribulation worketh patience, patience experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed. And you've got to believe that these bad things in life can make us stronger. That a new greatest generation are rising up in these violent times. The vast majority are made stronger from their experience. And there is so much garbage in the media about our troops. Like most of us have heard 22 veterans a day take their life. The best we can tell that's correct. You got to extrapolate an awful lot of data. But what most people don't understand is only one or two of that 22 are from the current war. Of course there's other veterans. Of course there's other wars. The term veteran applies to anybody who served in the U.S. Armed Forces. In the 1950s and 1960s, we drafted everybody. Elvis Presley was drafted. Elvis was a veteran. Here's a Gallup poll that tells us 24% of all adult American males are veterans. So there's 22 veterans a day take their life. It's this concept that the war, and they're all shattered by the war, and they're all taking the life when the truth is just the opposite. Or another one, an NPR piece based on a New York Times piece. Over 100 veterans have come home for this war and committed murder. It's true. Stop. We've been at war in this current war for 17 years. We've had well over 3 million Americans in the war zone. The murder rate for citizens 18 to 21 is 25 per 100,000 per year. Out of any million people, there should be 250 murders in this general age group. 3 million veterans in that age group should have given us 750 murders last year alone. Extrapolate that data back over 17 years of war, and our veterans should have given us thousands and thousands of murders. All they proved was, and this again is a fundamental baseline, the returning veteran is less than a tenth as likely to commit a violent crime as a non-veteran of the same age and sex. Now, I had to extrapolate a lot of data, put that together. I'd like to see somebody do a solid study. But I tell everybody across the law enforcement community, it's a truism, it's a baseline that the returning veteran is vastly less likely to commit a violent crime than a non-veteran of the same age. And I think we can make a pretty bold statement that they're about a tenth as likely, or less than a tenth as likely to commit a violent crime. But the real wild card out there is post-traumatic stress disorder. How many of our veterans have PTSD? The senator from California says all veterans are insane, can never be trusted again. How many veterans have PTSD? Half, third, a quarter? Lie. You know, you used to be you had to dig for this data, and now it comes right up. Go to the VA website, look up PTSD in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, this is from a study, and what we come up with is 16%, 15.5%. What we come up with, switch over here, is 16% of the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan have PTSD. 11% of the ones who didn't deploy have PTSD. About 5% contract PTSD. The British studied their troops in Afghanistan, 5%. The Dutch studied their troops in Afghanistan, 5%. You can make a pretty good argument, and I think there's real validity in this. You can make a pretty good argument that life in America messes up twice as many people as a combat tour. So where'd all these crazy numbers come from? Well, there was a pretty good study on the first batch of troops coming back from Iraq. And Google this, you find it word for word. It said 30 to 40% of the troops coming back at that point from Iraq had some symptoms of PTSD. Having some of the symptoms of PTSD is not PTSD, it's normal. A lot of noise goes off, boom, you hit the dirt. That's a symptom of PTSD. It's also a survival mechanism that'll take a while to go away. Yeah. So this is good data. And then the media, you know, in their report, they took one word out. Let's take one word out. Is that a lie? 34% had symptoms of PTSD. Oh, symptoms, you must have PTSD. Take one word out. Is that a lie? Take one word out. 30-40% have PTSD, and somewhere along the line, they lost the 30. Google 40% PTSD, similar times it comes up, hundreds of thousands of times, and every time it's a tragic misrepresentation of our veterans. I present at national, international psych conferences. A British psychiatrist sent me an email. He said, Dave, the returning British forces running 5% PTSD. The Americans running 40%. Well, what's the difference? The difference is it's this tragic misrepresentation of our veterans in the media. And a lot of what we're looking at is confirmation bias. You believe the war is evil, you believe everybody is sorted by war, you find data that reinforces that, and you stick with it. One of the most powerful and pervasive of all human dynamics is this confirmation bias. But part of it is straightforward political dynamic of the war is evil, everybody is destroyed, and anything we can do to represent the war as evil is legitimate for a higher cause, and we must never go to war again. But just understand this, that about 5% of the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan contracted PTSD. Now, 5% of 3 million veterans is a lot of people. 16% of 3 million veterans is 500,000 people. They need our help, and we'll be there for them. But we must go into that life and death event believing it'll make us stronger. I'm a reserve cop. I'm a reserve deputy coroner. Coroners see every mutilated body. They see every horrible crime scene. My CSI guys are always there, and we see every horrible event. And the emergency room docs see an incredible trauma and post-traumatic stress in coroners is almost non-existent. Emergency room docs having to look at this and deal with this, this is not one of the major causal factors. But the DSM, the Bible of Psychiatry and Psychology, says when the cause of your trauma is human in nature, when there's extreme fear, helplessness, or horror, combined with loss of life, limb, or grievous bodily harm, self or others, and when it's human caused, that's the dynamic. So just this daily toll of violence that we encounter can build up a body of it's called the bathtub model of stress. The bathtub can only drain so fast. And if the daily stress builds up too fast, and then it starts overflowing and it starts doing damage to the woodwork and the structure of the building. Yeah. So recognize that there's this daily flood of violence coming in can have an impact, but it is small, it is cumulative. We need to deal with it. We'll talk about how to deal with it, talk about what we can do, but recognize the fact that it is that actual incident where you're personally attacked, that actual incident of violence that happens in the emergency room is the most psychologically destructive thing that can happen. And we must guard against that. And the way we guard against that is having police officers there whose job it is to deal with that. They have the equipment, they have the body armor, they have the training. It's their job to deal with that. So going to that life and death event, believe it'll make you stronger. No pity party. A new greatest generation is rising up. For the violence overseas and the violence at home, we've got to go into that life and death event. Believe it'll make you stronger. Across the years, the accumulation of events, if we deal with it properly, it can make us stronger, and we'll end our career as a vibrant and strong and competent member of our community. And the vast majority of your seniors in this community are great models of what we're talking about. So no pity party. But the other goofy holiday myth is what I call the macho man. No pity party, no macho man or no macho gal, plenty of them out there. It was an old Miami detective. It was 20 years ago. An old Miami detective told me, he said, Colonel, he said, you tell these kids, don't be the macho man. He said, I got my shooting, it was eating me alive. Now, most cops getting a shooting is no big deal, but some it is, and that's okay. We're there for them. He said, it was 2 years of hell after my police shooting. I was losing my wife, I was losing my kids, I was losing my job. Finally, just before the divorce, my wife convinced me to get help. 2 months later, it was all over. 2 years of hell. For me and everybody I love, I could have ended it any time. I tried to macho it out. You tell these guys, don't be the macho man. The docs are good and they get better every day. We have got to create an environment in which it's okay to get help. And when you see people with trouble, you tell them, go get help. And here's the key. You must believe the help can help. And one of the greatest lies out there, I have no idea how we get away with it. PTSD is the untreatable disease. Here's a cover of Newsweek magazine, Breaking through the radical therapy for treating the untreatable victims of PTSD. There is no such thing. How did they get away with that? Well, they got hell. The online version edited that out. They went back and stealth edited it out. They got hell. But somebody who should have known better told somebody who should have known better that PTSD is untreatable. Again, I present at national, international psych conferences. I got every flavor of shrink in the audience from hundreds. I say, how many people in this audience personally know of cases where PTSD has been treated, recovered fully, and stronger for the experience? Well, over half the hands are up. Everybody with their hand up, poking a finger in the eye, are the guy that says PTSD is for life. Now, why in the face of ever advancing medical science? Why in the face of the indomitable human spirit? Why in the face of hundreds of thousands of cases are treated and recovered fully? Why would anybody, and a mental health professional in particular, say PTSD is for life? Well, 2 reasons. Number one is politics, and again, self-perception theory, and when we come back with saying the confirmation bias, the war's evil, and they're destroyed by the war, and they'll never recover. And you reinforce this bias, or you seek data, regardless if it's true or not, to get across this terrible point that war's evil, and anything we can do to depict it as evil is even untruths are okay because it's for a higher cause. But some of it is what I call job security. If I cure you in 2 months, I'm out of a job. If I hook you to a lifetime of therapy, and maybe with a lifetime of therapy, we can adapt. No. We're increasingly convinced if you want to get better and we get the proper treatment, almost everybody recover fully from PTSD, be stronger with experience. You know, I trained a major SWAT team a while back. During the break, they came up and said, hey, Colonel, the doc psyched this guy off the team. Now doc says he's okay. Can we trust him? Yes, you can trust him. He's stronger from the experience. He's got a piece of paper, as he's saying. You got one of those? So Marcus Luttrell, lone survivor. A lot of people saw the movie, know the story. Navy SEAL, his entire team was wiped out. He's captured. He's tortured. Every bad thing that could possibly happen to a human being happened to this man. Marcus Luttrell has a podcast called Team Never Quit. I was on his podcast a while back and got his permission to talk about it. I haven't been able to talk about it across the years. It wasn't in my books. I put it in a later edition so that I can talk about it now. Got his permission. I trained Marcus Luttrell's unit before and after that incident. Now, I talk to people, and this is really important. I talk to people, I tell them, and I think there's value in looking at it this way. Post-traumatic stress is like being overweight. Post-traumatic stress disorder is like being obese. We all intuitively understand the difference between overweight and obese. The Marcus Luttrell's doc told me he came back for that incident and he was 500 pounds PTSD, totally debilitated. A year later, he was 50 pounds PTSD. He wanted to deploy again with his unit, and he did, and it was a good thing. I told him at the time, look how far you've come in just the last year. Have confidence you can come farther. Anytime you can tell somebody, look how far you've come so far, have confidence you've come farther. Today, Marcus Luttrell tells us he is 100% post-traumatic stress-free and stronger for the experience. It took years. It wasn't easy. But if that individual can come out the other end, post-traumatic stress-free, anyone can. And so, no pity party, no macho man. We have a balanced path between these two obstacles. Now, we're not saying this is easy. We're not diminishing the difficulty of anybody's path. But it's a whole lot easier if you know the danger of the left and right. We just got to beware of that pity party. We got to believe that life and death event will make us stronger. We've all heard of a hypochondriac. A hypochondriac can make themselves physically ill through mental processes. Well, I think we can all understand that it's just as easy, if not easier, to make ourselves mentally ill through mental processes. If we believe that life and death event will destroy us, then we're halfway home to being destroyed. No pity party, but no macho man, no macho gal. If there is a problem, you deal with it and have faith that help can help. Well, the next step in resiliency is really the most important one of all. It's the elephant in the living room. It's the area where we make the greatest difference with first responders and everybody in our civilization. If you're severely malnourished and somebody attacks you, obviously those stressors can amplify each other. That's why the Holocaust survivors and POWs can have such a hard time of it. The malnutrition combined with the captors did to them, those stressors can amplify each other. If you're injured or ill, obviously, the injury, the illness is putting stress on your body. If somebody attacks you while you're injured or ill, those stressors can amplify each other. That's why the elderly can be so vulnerable. The physical infirmity of the elderly body combined with the traumatic event can make it harder for them. I tell my audiences, I'm willing to bet nobody here is severely malnourished. Probably nobody here is severely ill or injured. Mm-hmm. Entirely too many of us are sleep deprived. If you're sleep deprived and the bad stuff comes down, you're far more likely to have an aversive psychological response to what happens. The elephant in the living room is sleep deprivation in our first responders. Truck drivers, air traffic controllers, nuclear power plant operators, tugboat operators, ferryboat operators, Amtrak engineers, and lifeguards are all required by law to get enough sleep, but first responders aren't. That should enrage us. That should enrage us. And what we got is a couple of fundamental dynamics that I teach cops in all 50 states, every federal agency, and it's just important. Number one is sleep is a biological blind spot. Our bodies are incompetent at making us get enough sleep because it always happened naturally. Throughout history, every night across untold eons, it got dark. And from the very primordial roots of our species all the way up until 100 years ago, every night it got dark. And firewood's rare and precious commodities. You had so much talking, so much sex. There was nothing else to do. You went to sleep. Your body didn't have to make you sleep. It happened naturally. Now, our bodies are good at getting air, food, water. You ever think about how good the body is at getting the right amount of food? How much extra food would a kid have to eat to put on 1 extra pound a month? If a kid puts on 1 extra pound a month, by the time he's 10, he's 120 pounds overweight. So our bodies are pretty good at getting air, food, water. As we get older, it gets harder, and we got to watch it. But our bodies are absolutely incompetent at getting enough sleep. And 100 years ago, we invented electricity and electric lights and television and video games. And suddenly we can go 24/7 for untold eons. It got dark and there was nothing to do. And now there's incredibly addictive, vibrant, desirable things for us to do. And it's eating us alive. We're in the middle of a civilization-wide epidemic of sleep deprivation. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. First, understand that it's a biological blind spot. Second, understand that the video games and the social media is a social blind spot. Nobody ever told you this was a problem. Now, the video games are digital crack. Millions of people are online right now playing that game. We do this, and 10% say, oh, this is a good time to save the game and quit, so they never do that again. Mm-hmm. We do this, and nobody quits the game, so they do more of that. It is this constant interactive feedback loop with millions of people all the time to do one thing, to have just the right flicker rate, just the right color pattern, just the right plot, just the right dynamic to make that game impossible to turn off. People play the game until they die. They mess themselves and wet themselves where they're sitting because they can't leave the game. And research tells us 15% of all divorces in America, video games are the cause. Google video game divorce, come right up, 15%. But you see, it's a biological blind spot. It's a social blind spot. If you stagger in the house drunk 3 o'clock every night, you know you got a problem. You're up till 3 o'clock every night playing video games or on social media. You got no idea where the last 6 hours went. And your spouse is sincerely ticked off. When we play video games and a certain degree of social media, we go into a flow state. We become incapable of keeping track of time. It's very addictive dynamic all by itself for this flow state. And we become incapable of keeping track of time. So what I tell people, I tell my cops, if somebody would show up to roll call drunk, you'd kick his ass. If he shows up to roll call sleep deprived because he played video games all night long, he needs his ass kicked. There's nothing cute, there's nothing funny about showing up work drunk or hungover. They're so hungover you can't do your job. There's nothing cute, there's nothing funny about showing up work sleep deprived because you're in video games and social media all night long. And nobody ever told you that. It's just this social blind spot. So folks, I tell people there is nothing wrong with adults playing video games or social media, but you got to set a timer. Set a timer for an hour. Turn off the world every night for an hour. Play the game. Escape. Ding, the timer goes off. Use your steely discipline. Save the game and move on. I play a major, massive, metamorphic, online, orgasmic game. You can't do anything an hour or two a night. Okay, all right, okay. Decide now what's important. Is your family important? Is your health important? Is your job important? Was that game important? If that game's what's important, it's cool. Quit your job, move in your parents' basement, draw unemployment, buy a giant economy-sized bag of Cheetos, play video games all night long. Millions of people are doing that. But if you want to have a family, you want to have a job, you want to have health, you got to control this stuff. All right, so transitioning, then there's two incredibly stupid things we're doing in the first responder community. Number one is 12-hour shifts. Every department that goes to 12s, every major department, California Highway Patrol last year, the year before last, came off of 12-hour shifts. 10,000 people moved to 12-hour shifts, and it was a disaster. Accidents exploded, internal affairs investigations exploded, complaints exploded. A Harvard study tells us the single greatest predictor of ethical failure in law enforcement is sleep deprivation. The single greatest predictor of use of force failure in law enforcement is sleep deprivation. After 18 hours without sleep, we're impaired judgment. And this is the key thing. Hang on to this. Coming out of sleep deprivation is impaired judgment. After 18 hours without sleep, we're impaired judgment equal to 0.08 legally drunk. After 24 hours without sleep, we're impaired judgment equal to 0.10 above legally drunk. After 2 nights without sleep, you are psychotic. Any graduate of Army Ranger School, I'll tell you all about hallucinations on the 3rd day without sleep. You are truly psychotic. You're hallucinating. And we're in the middle of a civilization-wide epidemic of sleep deprivation. Now, in our military, in the active duty military, we study our suicides intensely. The only people who have truly good, solid data and study every suicide, call it what it is, active duty military. And in the active duty military, our suicides have nothing to do with combat. A non-combat vet is as likely to take life as a combat vet. Our suicides have a lot to do with sleep deprivation. Some of the data tells us sleep-deprived people can be up to 5 times more likely to take their life. Then Russia, when the communists were in control in Russia, the suicides were horrendous, and they locked down on alcohol and brought suicides down. The communists collapsed, alcohol thrived, suicides up. And in recent years, Russia has brought suicide back down by locking down on alcohol. We always knew that alcohol and suicide were related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment. You make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. But the most pervasive form of impaired judgment is sleep deprivation. And around the planet, we are facing an epidemic of teen suicides and preteen suicides. I can't find any portion of the planet that's not just being devastated by teen suicides. And you got to say, what is the new factor? And the sleep deprivation is destroying us. And again, let's go back to our 12-hour shifts. At the end of the 12-hour shift, people are exhausted. And they will say things and they will do things they regret for the rest of their life. So the data is there. The 10-hour shifts are barely doable. Got to put hard cap on it. But the old timers do what they were doing. 8-hour shifts, put a cap on overtime, and bid for your shift based on seniority. Because here's the other thing we're doing. The single most destructive, corrosive thing we can do is rotating shifts. It takes up to a full year to fully adapt to night shift. It takes up to a full year to fully adapt to night shift. There is nothing you can do that will psychologically shatter and undermine every person you have than rotating shifts. Line everybody up. Rotating shifts once a month? No, line everybody up once a month. Kick them right dead in the nuts. And that's better than rotating shifts. I get over that in a week. But rotating shifts will mess you up for weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, for months. But what happens is that the new guys get on duty, the cops, and it's, I don't want to wait to get seniority to be on day shift. This is no fair. Let's rotate shifts. Well, suck it up, buttercup. Because rotating shifts means everybody loses. I'm a huge science geek. My favorite website is sciencedaily.com. I check it every day through every category, dig deep in every category every day, sciencedaily.com. And the data on rotating shifts is just overwhelming. You're taking years off people's lives. If you're rotating shifts, just start saving money now. You're going to be sued. You're going to be successfully sued. And the rotating shifts destroys families. The recent research on this is overwhelming. Families can handle night shift. Families can handle day shift. They cannot handle rotating shifts. So the 12-hour shifts, and my cops and firefighters love to dog each other. I tell my cops, they want to be like firefighters. Work 12-hour shifts, get all that time off. Well, firefighters get to sleep on the job. Only firefighters and prostitutes make money in bed. And you ain't no firefighter, baby. Yeah. So if you're in an environment where you're going to be able to get those naps during that time, then that's okay. But what we're doing, we see our EMS guys on 12-hour shifts and they never get a break. And you got people making life and death decisions who are sleep deprived. And it is a negligent act. And so this sleep is the area where we make the greatest difference. And traffic deaths are up. Decade after decade, traffic deaths have been down. Seatbelts, airbags, medical technology saving ever more lives. And now worldwide traffic deaths are way up. And the new factor is this epidemic of sleep deprivation, impaired judgment, texting. Yeah, what kind of a moron? You look at impaired judgment right there, who thinks he can text and drive at the same time.
True.
But we're back not just distracted driving, but the underlying dynamic of sleep deprivation and drug overdoses. The three major killers of our kids: suicide, traffic deaths, and drug overdoses. And the new factor in all three of these exploding dynamics is an epidemic of sleep deprivation. Now, I teach schools nationwide. I teach school safety, and I've started to include this sleep hygiene class to every one of my classes. We got to teach our kids sleep hygiene. So what I've told you so far, most of the people listen to this, they can't control their shifts, although they should, and they got to get that fixed. They can't control a lot of things, but there are things you can control. And so there's some solid nuggets that we can apply. And Sleep 101 begins with Nap 101. So I tell people naps are friend. Naps are good, but shoot for 30 minutes or more. Now, a 30-minute nap is not a good nap. it's a minimum nap.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, I present all of our Predator and Reaper squadrons. I train our F-22 and F-35 squadrons. They always have the flight surgeon there. The flight surgeon's a scary, smart guy, full-blown MD, fully read up on all the latest research. And everything I've given you bounce off these guys and reinforced with these guys over time. And we know that the minimum nap is 30 minutes. It's not a good nap, it's a minimum nap. You're driving down the road, your head is bobbing. Take little micro naps. They call it the micro nap. Your head is bobbing. Pull over. Put your head down for 10 minutes. The alarm goes off. That's kind of a startle response. But as far as sleep deprivation goes, that 10-minute nap is a total waste of time. Put your head down for 30 minutes. The alarm goes off. You're bleary and you're groggy and you don't want to get up. You know why? Because you're asleep. It takes 30 minutes, fall solid, sound, deep cycle. Dang it, I don't want to get back up again and sleep. And anything less than 30 minutes is pretty much a waste of time. So my cops are putting nap rooms and in the police departments, not for the guys on duty. We're not firefighters, but you work a night shift and in 2 hours you have to be in court to testify. No way you could get home, get a good nap, and get to court. But if there's a quiet, dark place where I can crash for half an hour, that's solid gold. And have that quiet, dark place where we can crash. But what this means to us, and this is terribly important, the snooze alarm is not our friend. The snooze alarm is always set for about 10 minutes, sometimes 15. But a 10-minute snooze is just enough time to get their startle response. We've all been there. The snooze alarm is an evil little button that makes you relive the worst part of every day over and over again. And I'm absolutely serious. Never touch that snooze alarm again. Now, do some research on this. It's like you're trying to train your body to do 10-minute naps. Your body tries to adapt to 10-minute naps and it can't do it. You're doing physical and psychologically harm to yourself with a snooze alarm. And you get a 10-minute snooze, another snooze, a third snooze. You just threw away 30 minutes of the day. Those 3 snoozes, no value as far as sleep goes, then no value as far as your life goes. And so I tell everybody, I will teach you a trick that'll put 30 minutes of quality sleep back in every day. That adds up to 3.5 hours sleep back in every week. That adds up to 2 pure, beautiful nights sleep back in every month. That adds up to 24 nights sleep back in every year. Very simple. Set the alarm a half hour later and get the hell out of bed. And if you have to, and I'm serious, set the alarm for 7:01, 7:02, 7:03, 7:04, 7:05, and train your body to get out of bed. And one last thing. What about willpower? Grit, determination. Can you have that violent event happen and shrug it off? Are you in control of your life? Is your life in control of you? Was the first act of every day to surrender to your body? Was the first act of every day to give up and surrender to your body? Was the first act of every day to roll out of bed and take charge? The you that goes to bed has got to make you that wakes up in the morning get the hell out of bed. And I'm serious. Set the alarm, 7:01, 7:02, 7:03, 7:04, and get out of bed and train your body. It's not going to do it to hit that snooze alarm. I got to roll out of bed and train your body. Muhammad Ali, one of the great champions in history, champion boxer, he said championship began for him every morning the alarm went off. He hated running so bad, he put his running shoes on top of the alarm. When he went to hit the alarm, he grabbed his running shoes. That is championship discipline. And it begins every morning with the alarm goes off. The snooze alarm is not our friend. The dark is our friend. And folks, this is just one of the most important things we can do right now. Starting tonight, rock your world. You must sleep in a truly dark room. A sleep lab in a truly dark room. The bathroom light is on and the door is shut. The light coming under the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop your body from producing the melatonin that you need. Throughout the history of our species, we slept in the dark. Moonlight, through the trees, in a hut, in a cave was all there ever was. Dark, dark, dark. We're designed to sleep in the dark. The research tells us just the glowing dial of a clock. The glowing numbers of your clock is too much light. So what I'd strive for is I get in as dark a room as I can, and then I wear a sleep mask. And the combination of those two are one of the best things you can do. That sleep mask is one of the best things you can do. And you must train your children to sleep in the dark. Babies are sloshing with melatonin. Babies can sleep anywhere. By the time we become teenagers, we've got vastly less melatonin. As we get older, it gets less and less. By the time we become teenagers, and here's this suicide risk, here's this drug overdose risk, here's this traffic accident risk. If we have kids, we should be scared sick about suicide and drug overdoses and traffic deaths. And the one thing we can do is make them get sleep and make them get quality sleep. Train them to sleep with that sleep mask on. Train them to sleep in a truly dark room. They don't need it when they're really young. By the time they're teenagers, they need it. One thing you can do right now to rock your world is sleep in a truly dark room. The dark is our friend. Nicotine is not our friend. As always, someone at the perimeter said, man, if I have a dip, have a smoke, and stay awake, wrong. Caffeine. Caffeine, our friend, not our friend. What do you think? Caffeine is our friend. Caffeine is one of the most effective drugs we've ever found that temporarily limit your vulnerability with minimal side effects if we're not abusing the drug on a daily basis. Need a quadruple shot latte to get you going in the morning, a 64-ounce big gulp Mountain Dew to carry you through the morning, another couple of triple shot lattes at lunch, and a six-pack of Rock Bowl Star Monster energy drink after lunch. You're abusing the drug. We all know about habituation of drug. We all know about building tolerance to drug. And we've all seen little crackheads who are mainlining the drug to stay normal. That's what's happening with people with caffeine. So here's the challenge. Take the challenge. Go cold turkey on caffeine for one day. Cut off all caffeine. If you get any withdrawal symptoms, you know damn well that's what's happening. Those are withdrawal symptoms. Headaches, shakes, digestive problems, irritability. That's living proof you're abusing the drug. When you need it, it will not be there for you. So taper off, taper off, taper off slowly. And here's what we know. One of the things I stole from one of these flight surgeons. He's teaching this across the spec ops community. Now, what we know about caffeine, the half-life of caffeine in our body is 5 hours. That means the caffeine you took at 5 p.m. is at half strength when you go to bed at 10 p.m. It's making us have bad quality sleep. What we got to do is afternoon, cut off caffeine and use some discipline. But here's what we know too. Some very recent research on this, replicated, nailed down over and over again. Coffee appears to be just about one of the best things we can put in our body. Tea's right behind it. Coffee drinkers across the board are living several years longer than non-coffee drinkers. A lot of people are, I must be freaking immortal then, yeah. But here's what we know. 2, 3, maybe 4 normal cups of coffee a day, normal cups, are really good for us. 2 cups of coffee at breakfast, 2 cups at lunch, then switch to decaf and take all you want. The sodas, 2 studies last year showing these sugary sodas are carcinogens. There's research that leads us believe that the diet sodas are worse. We're metabolizing those diet sodas different than we thought we were. Now, 1 soda a day is not going to kill us. It's like having 1 candy bar a day. If your only form of hydration soda, it's just like your only diet is candy bars. And 1 diet soda a day is not going to kill us. But if your blood type is Diet Coke, if that's your only form of hydration, this is very, very bad for us. And the energy drinks are worst of all. We've been at war for 17, going on 18 years now. For the first 15 years, the U.S. military passed out energy drinks like water. They gave them to us, we gave them to the troops, and we're nice guys. And then 2 years ago, there were 2 major Department of Defense-wide studies on the energy drinks. Today, for all practical purpose, across the U.S. Armed Forces, there is a ban on issuing energy drinks to anybody in the military. They're like cigarettes. You want to buy them? We're not going to stop you, but we'll never buy them for you. You want to buy energy drinks? Well, you're an adult. We're not going to stop you, but we will never buy them for you. In an academic environment, the one pounding down the most energy drinks were the ones with the worst grades. In a tactical environment, the one taking the most energy drinks were the ones most likely to nod off on the job. All there is in that energy drink is a mega dose of caffeine and maybe some other stuff that will help you metabolize it faster. The energy drinks will give you a 1 hour burst of physical ability and then you crash. After the first energy drink, all the others accomplish nothing. Only you feel good for about 10 minutes. The third one, you feel good for about 5 minutes. The fourth one, you feel good for about 3 minutes, but they're not doing you any good. And the first one's not doing any good unless you're an athlete, had a 1 hour burst of physical activity. So recent research shows the energy drinks are powerfully correlated with PTSD. Is that a direct relationship? We don't know if it's causal. It could be the energy drinks are causing such incredible sleep problems, and the sleep is the factor in there. But all we know right now is that energy drinks are pure poison. They're condensed poison. And one thing we can do right now is stop putting that stuff in our body. Water, coffee, tea in proper amounts. Switch to decaf. Gatorade. Docs say if you're sweating a lot, cut the Gatorade 50%, pound it down, replace the electrolytes in your body. There's so many good things we put in our body. But with caffeine is such a valuable resource if we don't abuse it. So here's what this one guy's teaching across the Spec Ops community. And he's really nailed it about what caffeine is doing for us. And we all know, here's the sleep line. You fall asleep, you drop below the sleep line, some shallow sleep, and then some deep sleep. Now, folks, we now realize that a lot of major things happen in that deep cycle sleep. That's when the major tendon and muscles relax. Chronic sleep deprivation and chronic pain are closely associated. And, we look at our opiate epidemic, a lot of variables in there, but at least the prescription opiates have always been there. What's the new factor? Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. The tendons and muscles never relax. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill to fix it. You need more sleep, you idiot. And so this deep cycle sleep, we now know some real recent powerful research. During deep cycle sleep is when the body flushes all the garbage out of the brain. All those used up neurotransmitters are flushed out during deep cycle sleep. If you never get deep cycle sleep, what happens to all that garbage? Well, one of the major areas of research in our lifetime is Alzheimer's and dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. Well, why is there so much of it? What can we do about it? And study after study shows a powerful link between sleep deprivation and bad quality sleep and Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, I'm leaving out REM sleep. It happens later in the night. Don't let naps get in the way of a good night's sleep. Naps can't fully make up for a good night's sleep. If you know you're going to have time for a good night's sleep, use some discipline and don't let naps get in the way of good night's sleep. We're leaving out REM sleep, but get a little more shallow sleep, another shot of deep cycle sleep, wake up and take a leak, back to bed, another shot of deep cycle sleep, wake up and go face the day. If there's caffeine in your body, the sleep line moves. That's what the caffeine does. The sleep line moves. You wake up and roll over here, 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 and here, and you're not getting the deep cycle sleep here, here, and here. That's what caffeine is doing to us. It's making us have bad quality sleep. Guard your sleep. Protect your sleep. Sleep is that little vacation that waits at the end of every day. And caffeine is the enemy of good sleep. It is a powerful, useful, effective drug. And if you use it appropriately, then you've got to change shifts. You do extended operations. Caffeine is there for you. You're driving your family home from vacation. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, your head is bobbing. Your entire family is at risk. And caffeine ain't doing you no damn good because you've been abusing caffeine every day of your life. You've got an emergency and people's lives are on your hands, and you gotta really max it out and be there for them for extended periods of time. But caffeine is not there for you because you're abusing it on a daily basis. So the medical professionals of all else should use caffeine appropriately and understand the dynamics we're talking about here. Well, we changed topics here, and we're going to another topic, and we're kind of going fast and furious on the stuff that I cover in a day. But what I want to do is talk about what happens in the body in a life and death event. Now, I teach them we want to live our lives with the heart rate is low. And this is the concept is we live our lives in condition yellow. Now, condition white is denial. If we're in condition white and bad stuff happens, we're blindsided. And we didn't have security out there. We didn't prepare for violence. When it happens, boom, we're destroyed. Condition yellow is a state of readiness. We have security on site. We do the proper procedures. Anything goes wrong, you pop up condition red. Now, a basketball player is out on the court. Basketball player is rocking and rolling condition red. The basketball player can function in condition red because he's done 100,000 shots. He shot left hand, right hand, moving in, moving out. In the game, boom, he makes that snapshot. Or you give him 5 seconds to make a free throw. Study basketball players making free throws. He's taking a deep breath. He's pulling his heart rate down. He's pulling himself down to condition yellow. Regains fine motor control. Makes his free throw. That point man on the entry team goes in the door in condition red. Or he goes in the door in condition yellow. Somebody pops up close range, shoots at him. He pops a red, rocks and rolls, comes back down again. But who, in life and death situations, must live in condition yellow? Must keep their heart rate low. Must never lose fine motor control. Pilots. My helicopter pilot loses fine motor control in a close approach on the hot LZ. We're all having a very bad day. How's the pilot's voice always sound coming over the radio? Calm. The worse it gets, the calmer they get. Houston, we have a problem. Yeah. We're going in the Hudson. Yeah. How did they do that? They found out the hard way in 10,000 dogfights and 50,000 aviation emergencies coming over the radio for almost 100 years. If you can't control your voice, you can't control your hands. If you're pilot, emergency, you're going to die. If you can't control your voice, you can't control your hands. If you're pilot, emergency, you're going to die. So how should a cop's voice or a firefighter, or EMS voice sound coming over the radio during high-speed pursuit, during high-speed movement, like a pilot? My bomb techs, I train EOD bomb techs worldwide. My bomb tech loses fine motor control. We're defusing a bomb. He's got a problem. My cop in the high-speed pursuit, Mickey Mouse comes over the radio. You got a problem. And my docs. If my doc loses fine motor control, well, my life is slipping into his hands. I'm having a bad day. Understand? Yeah. But here's the key now. Here's the capstone. And leaders. Can we all agree that our leaders in all these life and death environments, military, law enforcement, first responders, medical, our leaders have got to remain calm? Can we, I mean, it's just a fundamental thing we can all grasp. When things are going to hell and people are dying, our leaders have got to remain calm. And so what that means to us is we nurture an environment of a quiet professional, the laconic Spartan, the stoic Roman, the inscrutable samurai, the stiff upper lip Brits, and today we talk about the quiet professional. Those are all different ways to say the same thing. The cultures who are known for the ability to control their emotions. And people say, I got to shout and kick and get their attention. Nah, we are what we practice to do. And if we practice having temper tantrums, when things go to hell, that's what we're going to do. Nobody respects our temper tantrum. We're all human. We all lose it sometimes. When we lose it, we know we made a mistake. Try to do a better job the next time. Nobody respects our temper tantrum. And as we get older, we'll get better at that. That's why most of us make better grandparents than we did parents. You know, I asked everybody, how many of y'all got kids? Yeah. How many of y'all ever seen your parents with your kids and said, are you the same ones that raised me? No, they're not. They're at least 20 years older, more mature. It's called maturity. We want to get it as fast as we can across this entire community. We've got to understand it is embarrassing to lose our cool. You can choose somebody out and never raise your voice. If you scream and shout, you're the one that has the problem, not them. Do you understand? And so we nurture this environment of the quiet professional. But let's look what happens when we get up in what we call condition black. Remember, condition white is denial. It traps us. When bad things happen, we go straight this realm we call condition black. Now, I got a model I want to put together for you. You know what? When I first started doing this, I was talking about, the limbic system, and I was doing an in-service presentation in a hospital. And this one guy said, no, it is not the limbic system, it's this. And this other one, no, that is the European model. We know it's this. And so for all I know, you guys are a couple of neurosurgeons. They were. 2 neurosurgeons couldn't agree. I said, what about this? What if we just call it the forebrain and the midbrain? The forebrain and the mammalian brain. Oh, yeah, that will work. That will work. And so just get you oriented. We got our little bitty bloodshot eye looking out this way. And inside the forebrain goes everything that makes us human. Let's call it rational thought. What happens in your head that will never happen in your dog's head? Rational thought. Right, the forebrain is a part of the brain I'm going to call the midbrain, or the mammalian brain. And there's an old joke. It's on a psychophysiology textbook for the 1950s, and I've seen it in a modern textbook. That function of the midbrain can be thought of as the 4 F's. Now, 4 F's are fight and flee, food, and reproduction. Every living creature does these 4 things. You, your dog, the bacteria in your body are capable of these 4 things. Now, the interaction between the 4 is fascinating. There is a powerful drive to reproduction in the face of death, and it scares people. Our spec ops community in 17 years of war, you see a lot of really huge families. Children are immortality, a drive to reproduction in the face of death. But my fire guys tell me that they're in a brutal, desperate 4-alarm fire. They finally put the fire out. They get home, and my EMS said, I got a 5-car pileup. I'm scrambling, saving lives, and doing my job. And I get home at the end of the shift, and the cop says, knock down, drag out fight, cuff them and stuff them. Finally get home at the end of the shift, and cop says, gunfight, bad guys down. I'm alive. Finally get home, and they all say, the best sex I've had in months. Both partners are very invested in some very intense sex. Nothing wrong if it doesn't happen. People, you won't get up for a little while. We expect that. Nothing wrong if it does happen. Is it the affirmation of life in the face of death? Is it a hormonal surge? We don't know. But there are not a whole lot of perks that come with this job. You find one, relax, and enjoy it. Off duty, wait. It'll still be there, I promise. All right? Now, here's why this model is important. Now, here's the key. When we become angry, when we become frightened, the forebrain shuts down. And what we're looking at here is a concept of vasoconstriction. Now, when I make the point when I talk about heart rate, if we talk about fear-induced or heart rate induced vasoconstriction. There's a photograph I used with permission of 2 individuals coming down for the World Trade Center on 9/11. She is experiencing vasodilation. We've all seen that. Vigorous physical exercise, your face is flushed, the blood vessels are wide open, pumping blood where it needs to go. He is experiencing vasoconstriction. When we talk about increased heart rate, we're talking about him, not her. It's fear-induced or hormonal-induced. And this vasoconstriction lays at the heart what the body does in a life and death event. Now, the researchers in this field tell us that the shutout is actually in the pre-capillary stage. There's mechanical shutout of the blood flow in the pre-capillary stage. The arteries can be holding up to twice as much blood. The body core can be holding to twice as much blood. The outer layer of the body becomes a layer of armor. You can suck up enormous trauma. As long as you don't hit the artery, you won't bleed out in the heat of battle. Does that sound like a survival mechanism? Mm-hmm. Let's say you're fighting a wolf. If the wolf wins, your family's dog food. You're not fighting for your life. You're fighting for the survival of your tribe. And you're trying to cave the wolf's head in with a rock. His jaws can shred your arm, but not get to the artery. His claws will shred your chest and not get to the body core. Sustained vicious battle. You cave in his head with a rock. You shred your arm. You shred your chest. You don't bleed out in the heat of battle. Then you cave his head in. You won the battle. You save your family. Then you relax. And then you bleed out and die. The body will always backlash in the opposite direction. The wound that didn't bleed the heat of battle gush blood afterwards. The day we slap a tourniquet on the wound. We survive in the battle because of vasoconstriction. We survive after the battle because our friend missed the tourniquet. But what's the price we pay for this survival mechanism? The muscles ain't getting blood. So initially, you begin to lose fine motor control. You do not have a lie detector. You have a stress detector. You shake somebody's hand. Their hand is cold and clammy at the early stage of vasoconstriction, and the handwriting probably be a little sloppy. As it gets worse and worse, you lose your complex motor control. It gets worse and worse. We're in a catastrophic realm. And what I tell people is, as the blood fully drains from the face, as the blood, this individual here is taking a blow to the left cheekbone. On the other side of the head, there's a pretty bad cut. He's been burned. He's on his second trip down for the World Trade Center. And this is the most powerful example of vasodilation and vasoconstriction side by side I've ever seen. But what we know about him is the blood fully drains from the face. The blood drains from the forebrain. And there's no rational thought of that person's head. You ever try to have an argument or a discussion with a truly angry, frightened person? You can't do it. The more angry, the more frightened, the less rational they become. The reason why you can't have an intelligent conversation with an angry, frightened person, there's nobody home. You're trying to argue with the dog through the mail slot. Nobody home with the dog, give it up. With the human being, you got to calm them down first. How do we calm people down? This is a key now. This is important. So I was a West Point psychology professor. The top military minds, the top psych minds after World War II put their heads together. What do we want every West Point officer to know about psychology? And it begins with this. We've got the sympathetic nervous system, we all know is pretty much fight or flight. And we've got that parasympathetic nervous system, also known as rest and digest. Now, we tell our West Point cadets, we think of your body like a military unit. When you're asleep at night, your unit's on stand down. There's not even a guard at the front gate. You're helpless. You're in maintenance mode. And this is the cooks and clerks and bakers and mechanics doing their job. We're in maintenance mode. You wake up in the morning and get what we call homeostasis. Got some guys on the front lines with a rifle, and you got the cooks and clerks and mechanics doing their job. You go to sleep at night, and you're back down here in the rest and digest mode. You get up in the morning, you're rocking on, and somebody tries to kill you. Boom! Total sympathetic nervous system arousal. Digestion? We don't need no stinking digestion. Blow the ballast and grab a rifle. They drop their rinse, they drop their pencil, they drop their spoon, they grab a rifle, they get in the front lines. And the further you go up this way, the further you go down this way. Now, how do we take somebody who's up here and bring them down there? Well, we're realizing, and this is kind of revolutionary new stuff, just trickling up from a baseline level. We're realizing the power of food to calm people down. Now, in a nutshell, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is every time you remember it, you relive it. We want to remember it. We don't want to relive it. So the path to healing is remembering it without reliving it. And one of the tools we're finding, I've used breathing for over 20 years, conducting interviews, and it started to become emotional. And I know some counterproductive that make it stop and breathe. Today, we put a bottle of water in front of them. The act of taking a swig of water. Our military and our elite units all have camelbacks, and they got the nipple right there. They do a mag change, they take a hit of water. They do this, they take a hit of water. And every time they're doing that, they're calming themselves down and keeping themselves in condition yellow. You first take a big swig of water. What we do is, a cop sent me an email. He said, I'm in a high-speed pursuit. He said, I key the mic. Hear Mickey Mouse come over the radio. I know we got a problem. But I remember what you said. He said, I got a bottle of water. take a big swig of water, key the mic, fighter pilot comes over ready from that point on. So a friend of mine is one of our nation's leading therapists for law enforcement. You know, I ask people, does a doc who treats a gunshot wound have been shot? You have been shot? You can't treat my gunshot wound. Well, that's insane. Or the shrink who helps you with whatever happened did not have to have been where you are to help. Yeah, Brian, you can't help me. That's a cop-out. And this lady is truly one of the greats in the field. And she told me, she said, 14 years of practice, 6 years of college, and that stupid bottle of water is doing more good than anything I've ever done. We might all know about critical incident debriefing or CISM. But ideally now with CISM, everybody sits down, they debrief, and they put a bottle of water in front of them. And anytime they start to become emotional, they stop and take a big swig of water and regain control. We're in a therapeutic environment, we talk them through what happened. Every time they start to become emotional, they stop and take a big swig of water. And it kicks this rest and digest into gear. What we're also finding, I don't know how far this has traveled across the medical community. The Air Force brought me out to Alaska to train the pararescue squadron up there. And the PJ, pararescue master sergeant, my host up there, his wife is a hospital emergency room psychiatrist. And she told him that when a crackhead or a meth head is tearing up the emergency room, they take a bag of M&Ms, they rip it open, shove his face, would you like some M&Ms? And defuse the situation. He said, I'm like, yeah, right. He said, I didn't buy it. I said, yeah, right. He said, well, this is the kind of guy, he's spec ops, multiple combat tours, carried gun off duty, kind of guy you want to carry gun off duty. He said, 2 different times, I thought I was going to have to draw my gun and fight for our lives. And both times, my wife reaches in her purse, grabs a bag of M&Ms, rips it open, shoves the guy's face. Would you like some M&Ms? And completely defuse the situation. He said, it's one thing when a pretty girl does it. I'm still not sure it works so good for me. But just thinking about food. And once they take that first one, boom, they're in that backlash and they're back here where we need them to be. But this is all real new. And I'm teaching cops by the thousands every year. And a cop comes up to me just a couple of months ago. He brings his partner with him to vouch for the story. He said, I got my partner here to vouch for this. I got a naked guy in the front yard. Naked guys are scary. Something's wrong here. Very often, what you're looking at is excited delirium. When a naked guy dies on you, get a core body temp. Very often, you'll be seeing a body temp 102, 3, 4, even 5 degrees, I've heard, and more. When somebody's dead and they got a body temp like that, there's nothing you did that caused it. And the reason they're naked is because they get in this metabolism, this hypermetabolism, excited delirium, and their body is hot and they take their clothes off. So here's the naked guy in the front yard screaming and throwing things around. The parents on the porch said, don't kill our kid, don't kill our kid. And the cops are there, and he said, I had a Snickers bar in my head. I thought, what the hell? I said, hey, buddy, you want a Snickers bar? He stopped. I said, you want a Snickers bar? He said, yeah. He said, well, follow me up to your room. Follow me up to your room, I'll give you a Snickers bar. And it worked. Now, was he in full-blown excited delirium? Would it work every time? We don't know. But it's one of those, what do you got to lose things? And understand the incredible power of food to calm people down. But the ultimate point is, how do we not go up here in the first place? How do we stay in the zone? And that's a concept of stress inoculation. That's a concept of identifying those stressful things that will happen to you, do it in a controlled environment, and develop this ability. Firefighters face real burning out with fire in training. Cops face bullets, real plastic bullets that hurt in training. And cops wear the sleeve and get bit by a dog in training. So when the real thing happens, they're not disturbed by this. And by the way, one World War II study said 20%, about 1 out of 5 of all the troops in World War II of intense combat would admit they messed themselves in combat. One of World War II vets said, hell, all that proves is 80% were liars. We don't know what percent were liars, but we know at least 1 out of 5 of the kids in World War II of intense combat would mess themselves. This is that rest and digest completely shut down. And people are devastated by this. I asked my first responders, what ratio of accident victims have messed themselves? That's all over the map, but it's very common. and people are devastated. I'm talking lifelong, destroyed, devastated. So why is the body doing this? And before a life and death event, it was 20 years ago, I took talking with LAPD SWAT. At that point in time, LAPD SWAT policy was try to give us 20 minutes. Negotiation broken down. Here's your 20-minute warning. Time to go in. What do they do with that 20 minutes? They call it the battle crap. Your body will help. It's called stress diarrhea. Even if you don't lose it, it will call the pucker factor. That's when one body's trying to hold in, while another part of the body's trying to eject. Well, why is the body doing this? Well, you're redirecting energy, but here's first and foremost. Inside every human body is a toxic waste site. It's the colon, and it's under pressure. If there's trauma to the colon, it'll leak out and infect the wound. Prior to modern medication, you're dead. It's very reasonable for the body to dump that toxic waste and to go from an overpressure to an underpressure. It can be almost spasmodic and shut down the colon. And they talk about your bowels turn to water. You know, it's the old phrase of combat. And the body takes that toxic waste and ejects it. And the colon goes from an overpressure to an underpressure. Is that not an amazing survival mechanism? Is that not a reasonable thing for the body to do? But it is so important to tell people that's your body's natural response. It happens all the time. You can literally save somebody from shame and desperation. I mean, I've seen veterans who were just lifelong devastated about their entire military experience because this happened to them. So these dynamics are important, and the breathing exercise is something we can do that we won't get into right now, but it lies at the heart of the matter, the breathing to keep ourselves in the zone. We don't always have water there. We can always stop and take a deep breath. And the breathing is a tool that we can use we can bring your heart rate down. You can bring your blood pressure down with simple breathing. We've taught the breathing for decades. We taught to breathe in for the nose. Wow. Well, that's what seems to work. Well, a study last year showed that a major study showed that a deep breath in through the nose can have a major effect in some areas, but it wasn't working the same way through the mouth. But what we teach people is you breathe in through the nose for 4 count, hold for 4 count, out through the lips for 4 count, hold for 4 count, again and again. You can always have a bottle of water there. You can always grab an M&M, but you can always stop and take a deep breath. I've got vast numbers of case studies in my files, 21 years on the road doing this. I get emails on a steady basis, and of all the topics, the breathing has saved the most lives. It's had the most impact. People are in hospitals, barely keeping under control, choking and vomiting, and they use the breathing to get under control. Just all kinds of examples of it. This fundamental tool, and we're teaching the breathing to little children. Now, remember I told you the Dutch studied their troops in Afghanistan, 5% contracted PTSD. But they studied this 5% very intensely. And their research, they don't think it's actual combat that's doing it. They think it's a predisposing factor. And the predisposing factor is people know how to ramp it up. They've never been taught how to ramp it back down again. Now, the water thing, taking a drink of water, throughout Asia, it's part of their culture. You see it on TV, across Japan, Korea, China, on TV shows, somebody's upset, they hand them a glass of water. And the kids are upset, you hand them a glass of water. And after a couple, you need a glass of water? Yeah, I need a glass of water. But they're teaching this breathing to little kids at a young age. I taught it to my grandkids. I'm talking 3 years old. They do it like this. You take a scented flower and a candle, and you model the behavior. Smelling the flower, enjoy it, blow out the candle, watch the smoke. Now you do it. That fast, you got a 3-year-old breathing on command. And teaching this breathing at young ages. When we talk about test anxiety. Test anxiety is when you're trying to take a test in condition red. And what I did, I taught intro psych in 3 different universities, and I taught the breathing right up front, and then I'd make them breathe during the tests. Within a semester, I was in Arkansas State University. I ran the ROTC program. I did 2 sections of intro psych, the biggest auditorium on campus, filled full. And all the coaches use their coach override to get people in my class. And the first thing I teach them is physiology. And the first test, I'll make them stop and breathe. And nobody has ever taught them the basic fundamental skill of controlling their body. And you know, every place I've ever been, the college, they tell you that football players are dumb as a box of rocks. Well, that's no fair. They don't know everybody else. But their sport does work against them. The football player wants to spend the whole game in condition red. Other than the quarterback, the kicker, you know, even the receivers is kind of bilateral dynamics. The linebacker, the lineman, they slam their head against the locker. We are through the whole game in condition red. Their happy spot is red. Put a football player under stress, he's in condition red. You take a test in condition red, and you're screwed. But you take those kids and you teach them to breathe during the test, and you give them this fundamental human skill of using the breathe and pulling themselves from condition red down to condition yellow and regaining control of their body. It's revolutionary stuff. And I've gone through a lot of stuff. You know, we could work right out of the DSM, and you know, you got to have extreme fear, helplessness, and horror in a life and death event. We can't prevent that life and death event. Yeah, we can. Having a cop there to deal with it. Yeah, what a good idea. But even then, how do you prevent intense fear, helplessness, horror in a life and death event? Stress inoculation, training, preparation. Think about the things we can do. Understand this. Having the puppy comfort visit is not PTSD. It's normal. How you deal with it will determine whether or not you get PTSD. If you make peace with the memory, you separate the memory from the emotions, get on with life, you're good to go. You try to not think about it. You will literally drive yourself crazy trying to not think about it. You have got to make peace with the memory. EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprogramming, is doing amazing work. The eye follows a visual stimulus while you talk about it and think about what happened. The puppy's in the front yard chasing a ball while you're talking about it. Following that visual stimulus, that's a midbrain task. And the puppy can only do one thing at a time while you're following that visual stimulus. If you use the EMDR protocol appropriately, the puppy's busy and you can talk about it. You can remember it without reliving it. So these are all dynamics that come together and tie into that process. But what I want to do is just kind of tie up with a couple of key things, understand life and death things that happen in the event and then after the event.
Great.
So just so everybody here understands, in a life and death event, very often we get diminished sound. Shots are muted for cops in combat. Tunnel vision. People talk about looking through a toilet paper tube. Autopilot. Holstering, unholstering without conscious thought. And then we've got the slow motion time. I am convinced the slow motion time is real. I have had hundreds of people tell me they can see the bullet in combat, and I believe them. In many cases, they walk up and point where the bullet hit. Nowhere they could have done that. They weren't tracking with their eyes. It's like airsoft, where the bullet's slow enough for you to track with your eyes, and I believe them. Memory loss. Half of all trained seasoned cops had blackouts, gaps in the memory. These things freak people out. And memory distortions. It was early in the war. One of our tier 1 spec ops medics came up to me and said, why do the wounded hallucinate so much? Hallucinate. Memory distortions. So set aside the fact that somebody's trying to kill you. Just set aside the fact that somebody's trying to kill you. If you're sitting here right now, boom, autopilot, blackouts, hallucinations, that would meet every definition of a psychotic episode. Just those things by themselves would scare the daylights out of you. But if you've been warned that might happen, they won't blindside you. A California Highway Patrol officer, been in my class, he'd been forewarned. He and his partner on a traffic stop. Bad guy murders his partner. He kills the bad guy, applies CPR on his dead partner. Don't get a whole lot more traumatic than that. He said, Dave, you cannot imagine how valuable it was in the middle of the gunfight. It was normal for my shots to be muted. He said, tunnel vision, like looking through a soda straw. Autopilot, holstering, unholstering without conscious threat. He thought it was freaky. Slow motion time was freaky, and it's real. He said the memory gaps during the debriefings, people talked about things I didn't remember. And I was okay with that. Memory distortions. He said there were one or two things I remembered. And everybody who was there said, no, man, that didn't happen. He said, if I didn't know those memory distortions could happen, I would spend the rest of my life thinking they all conspired to lie to me about some goofy little aspect of what happened. So it's important to be warned about what happens in the event. But it's even more important to be warned that crazy things that can happen after the event. Arkansas State Trooper, first gunfight. Bad guy's down, he's alive. Happy ending to the story. A week later, he's sitting up in the bleachers with his wife, watching their daughter at a swim meet. His daughter's gun goes off when he doesn't expect it. Boom! His heart is pounding. He's gasping for air. He's drenched with sweat. He's re-experiencing the event. Nobody warned him this might happen. Nobody taught him what to do. But yeah, he had a couple of hard years while he dealt with this. But now we warn people and we teach them what to do. Use your breathing. Get it under control. Get help if you need it. No pity party, no macho man. Have confidence in your breathing. Have confidence in your ability to leash in that puppy, but don't hesitate to get help if you need it. Where we see this most often with cops. A cop will be in a deadly force incident. 6 months later, he goes to qualify. The first time he pulls that trigger, that puppy's all over him. Yeah. The forebrain shuts down. The puppy blows a hole through the screen door, grabs him by the throat, pees in his lap. Gunfight, gunfight. Where's the gunfight? So what we're doing is we're taking our cops who've been in deadly force incidents, and when they're good and ready, we reintegrate them. Smell is one of the most powerful of the senses. The smell of the gunpowder on the range. The concussion. If you stood on the range, there's kind of a concussion of the shots, and they're wearing good hearing protection, and then they dry fire a couple of times, and they do sub-cal fire, and then they work up to it. But we've got to warn people, having that puppy come for a visit is not PTSD. It can become PTSD depending on how you deal with it. Use your breathing, leash in that puppy, but we come full cycle back to no pity party, no macho man. Don't hesitate, get help if you need it. And let's go back to this photograph right here. This individual's name is Christopher Amoroso. I said he's taken a blow to that left cheekbone. He's on the other side of the head, there's a pretty bad cut. He's been burned. He's on a second trip down for the World Trade Center. Bodies are falling all around him. The smoke and flame above him. There's no rational thought that man's head. But what's he going to do that she's not? He's going back. People tried to stop him from going. People told him not to go. He's been cut. He's been bleeding. His eyes are rolled up in his head. But like some mother who races in a building to save a beloved, and races in a burning building to save a beloved child. Christopher Amoroso will go back up that building a third time. The building will fall, and he will not come home to his wife and baby tonight. Or never come home again. So why does one person go up the steps again and again while thousands are coming down? So if we pose the question, what is the opposite of fear? You know, a mama critter will die for one thing, her babies. Won't die for anybody else's babies. But she loves her babies enough to die for them. The most decorated American soldier of World War II was Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy was asked one time why he did it. His answer was simple: they were killing my friends. They were killing my friends. Audie Murphy loved his fellow soldiers and enough to die for them. And Christopher Amoroso, he loves his fellow citizens. Men and women he's never met. We say in our Sheepdog Kids book, we got the Sheepdog Kids book, and it's a pretty good resource. And I commit it to your attention and your listeners here. And the sheep will die to protect the ones they love. Only the sheepdog loves enough to die for other people's loved ones. And the opposite of fear is love. Along with the 100 cops that day, 300 EMS and firefighters died that day. And they willingly went to their death because they loved their fellow citizens more than life itself. And I'll tell you, those people who go out there every day, put on the line for us, our first responders, our EMS, our emergency room, that all of those who put it on the line for us, they deserve the very best that we have to give to them. You take every resource that you have, you dedicate everything in your power to taking them and caring for them the way they deserve to be. Because they're two of the best that our nation has to offer. They're the best that our civilization has to offer. And they deserve the best that we have to give to them. So thank you for the opportunity to share this with the magnificent men and women that you're working with. It's been my honor. It's been my privilege. God bless and stay safe.
Really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Colonel.
Well,
have a great night.
My pleasure.
Thank
That's
you.
a pretty good stopping point there, brother. Anything good? Anything else we need to hit?